Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming to my talk. Just giving everyone a minute to sit. So today I'll be talking about a fake iPhone that I recently got. And I'll tell you guys the story a bit about that, but as hackers, we are very curious, right? So when I found out that a fake phone is a thing, and that I had one in my hand, I had some questions. So this presentation is a story about how I got a fake phone, the questions I had, the process I followed to get the answers, and what those answers are. It's a story of issues that I ran into, and hopefully we can all laugh about it, or cry about it together. Let's see. So who am I? I'm Ansie. I got married after I submitted my paper, so I'm now Williamson. I've been working at Redshift for half a decade, where I've been doing penetration testing for many years, and I now have the privilege to be in the digital forensic and incident space. I get to do investigations on things like fraud and insider threats, breaches, ransomware, etc. I'm also very heavily involved in the mobile space, as I was head of mobile a while back, when I also launched a mobile training YouTube series on Redshift's YouTube, just because I saw there wasn't really a lot of beginner mobile information. How do you actually get into mobile? That was way back when. There's a lot more information at the moment. One thing, I also started being in charge of training at Redshift, where I started training everyone on mobile when I was still head of mobile. And one would think because I do training for a company, I would be better at talking in front of people, but unfortunately, no. I'm currently the head of digital forensics and incident response at Redshift. And then I have 2 dogs, Simpson and Daisy, and I have 2 bunnies, Waffle and Jon Snow. And yes, I do have pictures, don't worry. It's the white one that's like doing this, that's Jon Snow. Okay. As a means of introductions, when I submitted this paper, this is the introduction that I submitted as well. In short, I wanted to know 2 things. Is this device actually safe to use? And is this device a credential harvester? I'll show you guys why I had that question in a bit. But let's actually look at the device in question. I have it here. For those who want to read that, you can. Let's see if this works. Okay. So this is the device. Switching it on. It's not great. If anyone wants to see the device afterwards, please just come and grab it. But you guys can see this is actually pretty good, right? This is claimed to be an iPhone 13 or iPhone 14. It was advertised as a 14, but the serial number comes up as a 13. Unlocking the device, it's not bad. It's not slow, right? It's not bad. If you're not an iPhone user and you're not clued up, you wouldn't really be able to tell. This is the settings. Okay, looks standard. Looks like an iPhone, right? From the research that I did from previous fake iPhones, this is like the iPhone 10 that they made, there was discoloration on the side, and you can't really see on the camera here, but there is no discoloration. There's no blue tint on this camera at the back. Heavy blue tint, that was another indicator of previous ones. There's nothing like that. Hardware, you can't really tell, except if you really know iPhones and you know the speed that this phone is supposed to be. So, how did I actually get this phone? So, someone I know who's very intelligent, who I may have or may have not married, wanted to buy a new phone. And he thought he's going to go to the trustworthy Facebook marketplace, because that's where we get tech, right? He and his brother-in-law, who's a lawyer, went to pick up the phone, and beforehand, they Googled everything, how to know if this phone is stolen or how to know if it's a bad purchase, right? More towards if it's a stolen phone, not fake phones. We weren't as clued up that that's a thing at that point. Every check was bypassed. And when he got in the car, he saw the first strange thing. Obviously, at that moment, it's very quick. It's like, check the phone, check the IMEI number, everything looks good, you're on your way. And when you actually look, it's a stressful situation, right? And then when you actually look, he saw something wrong. We are two hackers married to each other, and this happened to us. What chance does our parents have, right? And this actually just shows how sophisticated adversaries has gotten. So what did Google say that we should check for? The first thing is factory reset the phone. Because if it has an active profile assigned to it, if it's stolen, you won't be able to. It'll stop. It's an Apple security thing, right? So they did that. They factory resetted the phone. Everything's still fine. Check the serial number. On Apple's official website, they entered the serial number, and it showed up as a legit phone. However, it did show up as an iPhone 13 Pro. But the guy was like, yeah, well, I put it wrong on the advert. Whatever. Go on. The other one is just ensure that no account is signed into the phone. So go into settings, see if someone signed in. It wasn't. I also looked up, when doing research, to how to identify if this is a fake phone. And someone actually said, just put the serial number in the Apple check coverage, this screenshot. Put it there. If it comes up, this phone is legit, it's safe. Clearly not. So some signs that we got that it was fake. Obviously, now that I'm going to mention it, it's going to seem super obvious, right? You're like, how did we miss this? It is a bit slow. It's not as slow, but it's a little bit slower if you're an advanced media user. There's an Android error on the phone. This is an iPhone. There's a spelling mistake on the settings application. And there's incomplete functionality, so you cannot search in settings. If you go into settings, you can search for like a word like hotspot or whatever, and it'll bring up that setting. You can't do that in this phone. The battery also doesn't last as long. But obviously, you only see that when playing with the phone. Another indicator that I wouldn't recommend using is the little side button, the mute button for those of you who have iPhones. It is a little bit wonky, but not enough if you don't know. Some error messages, the one on your right, that is Google. That is when you open Apple Maps, it shows you the nice Google sign-in. The second one is if you open the Files app, there's an Android folder, and for those of you who know, there is an Android folder structure. That's how the Android file structure looks like on old Androids. The other one is messages. It seems fine, but when you swipe up, you see the little message icon. That's very old Android. The last one is, I don't think that's Siri. Maybe it was Siri, but I'm just young and I don't know. But that's when you get when you press for Siri. I have some videos for you guys. It's not as stable. My hand's a little bit shaky, but let's go with it. That's opening the files, internal storage. Then you see all the file structure. I went into data. Note there is a joy.apk. That's joy7.apple.appstore. This tells me that the App Store setting is a malicious APK, right? It's fake. Can't remember the English word. The Afrikaans word is nagemaak. This is Apple Maps. That's Google. There's your Android error. This is podcasts. That's Google Play. This is Find My Friends. That's still Google. There's another Find My Friends. I'll show you guys the screenshot of that one now, but both of them have Android errors, right? So I'm starting to think this is actually an Android, maybe. Then there's some spelling mistakes. On your left hand, my left-hand side, the Apple ID, there's a spelling mistake. If someone wants to give that a shot, give you like 2 minutes. Anyone? Don't have a? On the right-hand side, there's two issues, but it's not spelling mistakes. But if you are a mobile user in the mobile space, you'll know that that's the incorrect wording for it. And that is cellular and personal point. That's supposed to be mobile service and personal hotspot. Then there's two find my friends. The one is to find your enemies, and the other one is for close relatives. Then an interesting thing is the compass. So I was playing with the phone, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, and this one gave me a giggle. I hope it gives you guys a giggle as well. I hope you don't get stuck with this phone. You'll get lost. Okay, so I had some questions, naturally. The first one is, what operating system is this? Obviously, we can see it's Android, but what Android is it? Is it the Android open source community project? Is it just a very old Android? Or is it something completely different and they just used some code from Android? Is this a credential harvester? The Apple ID sign-in has a spelling mistake. Are they actually stealing my credentials if I put it in? Does this phone call out to somewhere? Does it have a home base? A malicious URL that it's connecting to? What's the actual security risk? Can you actually use this phone? Like, can I just use it? It'll be a little bit slow and a little bit wonky, but can I just use it? How did they do the IMEI in the pictures? So if you go on the phone, and from the research that I did, the phone has 6 pictures on it and 1 video. I wish I could show you guys, but I don't know the age restriction at this conference. It is Asians in bikinis, so it's a little bit inappropriate. I'm not going to show it. But if you ever buy a phone, you open it, and there's random 6 pictures of Asian women and a random Asian commercial video, then it's fake. Right? And for those of you who wants to see it afterwards, just show me your ID and I'll show you. Then what are some indicators of fakeness? How do I help people not fall for this? Because this was an expensive phone. I'm not going to admit how much we pay for it. Now, I devised a plan. First off, I want to image the device. So we have a forensics lab, and we have imaging software for mobile devices, and I want to image this device, which I had some issues with, and I'll get to that. I want to check the BIOS information on this phone. Maybe there's additional information, which again gave me some issues. I want to check the file system and maybe root the device, data shell. I want to check the network traffic to see if it's trolling out and see if it is a credential harvester. And I want to play with it to see if there's anything that you can realize, oh no, this is fake. Okay. So something to take into consideration when imaging a device, getting root, is you need to know what the phone is. I don't know what this phone is. I know nothing. I don't know what hardware it uses, nothing. So let's go to the first one, the easy one. I wanted to check the BIOS. A little problem here, I don't speak Chinese. Wish I could, but I can definitely not read it. So luckily, my brother-in-law does. But he was busy, so I had to use Google. If you guys know, this is very standard Android BIOS settings. I actually did do the manual testing on the phone just for curiosity's sake. Microphones, speakers, everything worked. There's no issue with the hardware. I mean, it's not as good. For example, the zoom on the phone is artificial. Definitely 2 of those cameras are fake. But if you are not as technically clued up, you won't know that, right? I mean, I don't think my dad would know that this zoom is artificial or not. Yeah, and then I went into the version information of the phone, which gave me some very interesting information. First one is that chipset. I know we all know off by heart, but that chipset is actually, there's a TWR exploit available for it, for that specific chipset. So we can root the phone, great. Second one is, it's an Android 6, that's very old. Android version 6, so definitely Android. Then there's two IMEI numbers in the BIOS. So when they first got the phone, they did check the IMEI numbers and it showed up as an iPhone. Apple, fine. I checked these IMEI numbers. There's two different names that I got. The first two is just the first two IMEI numbers in the same one, and then the other one is what the rest of the site said. Now, excuse me for butchering these names, but the first one we see is Quan Tong Tong, and then we have a shaman. I won't attempt the rest. Obviously not Apple, right? So I went into a little bit of research into both of these companies, and both of them are Chinese-based. Very little is known about Quan Tong Tong. I don't know if that's correct. Both of them may be fake. But there's very little information about that. Perhaps I just don't know the correct Chinese name, and that's why I'm not finding it on Google. The second one, Shaman, is a technology company that manufactures, it seems like network equipment, but there's no clear relation seen between the fake phone and these two companies. So I'm unsure what the connection is. It can just be fake, or they do this in the background. Okay, so now I want to image the phone. We use oxygen forensics to image mobile devices in our forensics lab. Now, to do this, you need to choose a method. There's two methods of doing this. The first one is you choose the exact phone. So you'll say, okay, this is a Samsung S23 version this, okay? That's not possible. I don't know what this is. I can choose iPhone 14. I don't think it would work. So, new plan. The second method is you can deploy the agent itself if you're unsure. So you can deploy an Android or iOS agent. Just for fun, because I still don't know really what it is, I know we all know it's Android, but I mean it's an iPhone with Android, it's confusing. I deployed both. So iOS obviously didn't work, it wouldn't work. But the Android agent also didn't work. And this is because you need USB debugging to be enabled. To enable USB debugging, you need to go into Android's developer options, which is in the settings, which this phone doesn't have. This phone has a fake iPhone settings app. So I decided to make the phone even less secure and put a fake developer options on the phone. So I installed a secure APK on the phone, and this allowed me to enable USB debugging. And I was successful in taking an image of the phone. It was fairly quick, there's not a lot of information on the phone, and then I used that software to scan the image for malware. Unfortunately, there was no malware on. I thought that would be cool, but unfortunately, there was no malware. Okay, now we need to root or jailbreak the phone. So first, when I first had this dilemma, when I first didn't know it's an Android, I thought, do I root or do I jailbreak? For those of you who don't know, rooting is for Android, jailbreaking is for iPhone. Is it based on the hardware or the software? What is the hardware? Don't know. Rooting needs USB debugging. Luckily, I got that. Getting it to safe mode and fast boot. It sounds easy enough, but this is where my biggest stumbling block came when it comes to this phone. And I'll explain now. And then which one? Do I use Magix? Kingo root? What do I use? So getting this phone into fast boot is possible. Getting it out of it is not. Every single time I've done this, the phone just freezes in fast boot and I have to wait for the battery to die before I can get it back. This might be because of the hardware being weak. I'm a little bit unsure. I ran a little bit out of time, so I decided that can be phase 2, is to get this thing to actually root, but I wanted to do the rest of the research before I broke the phone. I did attempt Kingo root, which you guys would know is a just click and root. Sounds too good to be true, because it's not, it didn't work. Okay, so next off, let's look at the network traffic of this device. There's 3 parts to what I want to see when it comes to the network traffic. The first one is the settings app. So you guys saw it has the Apple settings. It has a sign-in. The sign-in asks you for a username, your email, and a password. I put in a fake username and password, and it let me authenticate. So I was like, maybe this is just, a STEN. It doesn't do anything. It's just static. But a lot of credential harvesters do look that way. It's like, oh, it's broken, whatever. But it actually is sending out your information. I also wanted to look at the suspicious APK, the Joy7. What is that? What does that do? Then some of the installed Google apps. We're getting the Google errors, but is this a legit Google APK, or is this also a fake one that they created? So I'm trying to intercept the network, but I need to install a cert, and I'm struggling with the root, and I'm having a struggle, right? And my husband just brought up, why don't you just proxy it with burp? I was like, because you need the cert. You need to install the cert on the phone. And I can't because it's not rooted. And he was like, well, it's giving cert errors if you use Google. So maybe not. Apparently not. I could just fully proxy the phone without installing the cert as a system cert. So yay. Okay, so now I need to proxy the phone. Okay, how do I proxy the phone? You go into Wi-Fi, you go into settings, you put the proxy on manual, and you enter your host's IP address, right? Because the settings app is incomplete, the proxy button is static. It doesn't work. You cannot put proxy on. So I had to use ADB to set the proxy, but I was well on my way. Okay, here are some burp screenshots for you guys to look at the information being sent through. As you guys can see, this is information from the com.joy7.apple.app store one. This was the first one that came up when looking at my burp. I also validated that we're not missing any SSL traffic by looking at the burp errors and the TLS burp errors, and to see which hosts those were that it's getting the cert error to. It was mostly just Google things, like add.google and everything, so that was fine. So if it was a certificate pinning error, it would have showed up in the error log from burp, right? Looking at the App Store, I found 3 very interesting endpoints. I will not attempt that first name. The second one, the net.rayjump.com, and then we have a random IP address. These are the 3 locations that the App Store was calling out to. So I thought, yes, great, credential harvester. So the IP address, the 47.2371, that is an IP address based in California, and it is owned by Alibaba Cloud. Do with that what you wish. When I downloaded an app, so I went on to the phone, pressed download, it asked me for my credentials, those that I randomly put in that I forgot about. I forgot what the password was, but it's asking for that. I'll show you guys how I got through that now. But when I then put in the password, press download, it doesn't download anything. Nothing gets downloaded. I tried multiple times. And when I put in the password, it doesn't get sent out to one of these strange store or URLs. So it seems that the App Store was just a stint, which I feel is a missed opportunity from the scammers. Like, this would be a really good way to get my creds. The Google Play Store on the phone gave certificate issues, so that one looked like it was a valid Play Store. So there's the App Store, and then there's a valid Google Play Store. Okay. I don't have the password, I forgot what it was. So I just opened Logcat, and I was like, maybe it's like sending it, because if that app is fake, where I put in the credentials in the settings, it's not working. It's not sending anything out, I checked. It must save it locally to the device, right? If it's saving it locally to the device, I can get it in shared prefs, but I need root level access, which I don't have because I can't root the phone. So I went into Logcat with the hopes that maybe they're sending this as a sign to check if the username and password is this, and if it is, then let it through. And it reminded me what my password was, so I was very glad about this vulnerability. But there I found the password. I then went back into the settings app, removed the user associated with the account, and re-signed in. And that is the second one that you guys can see there, where it actually assigns the user with the clear text password. Obviously, this is a very bad practice. It's very bad practice to put clear text credentials in your logs, because everyone can get it. You don't need root, right? So this is a vulnerability, but I mean this whole phone is a vulnerability, so that we don't really care. Okay, so now going into what some indicators of fakeness is, my IOFs. First one is the images and the video, which I still can show. Take the phone, if you ever get one of these phones, take the phone, go into the phone. Obviously, you're not going to sit there with burp and check if it's like weird URLs, right? So this is practical things you can check for. First one, check the images. If there's 6 random images on the phone, and even if you restart the phone, the images persist. So we restarted this phone, factory reset, everything, the images stay there. The images and the video. That's there from every single one of the videos that I watch. Granted, there's not a lot, of other people with other fake phones, which wasn't the 13, 14, it was like a 15 and a 12 and a 10. But they all had these images. I don't know why, but it is there. So if you see that, that is an indicator. The second one is the volume down. For those of you who's going to come afterwards to feel the phone, you can kind of feel it's wonky. A little bit wonky. If you don't know better, you don't know better. The third one is the errors, the spelling mistakes, and the files. So I think the errors one is a really good one to go after, is make the phone error out. Make it have to error. Disconnect it from the internet and try and open something that needs internet. Go too fast, make it confused. Because ultimately the errors was the first indicator to us. The spelling, I mean, if you're good at seeing the spelling thing, then that's great. But I mean, if you're in a rush, you're stressed because you're talking to someone, and we're introverts, we don't like that. You know, you're looking on the phone, you're not going to find that. You're not going to find the hover. You're not going to find the spelling mistakes. But if you can, great. And then opening the file system, because that file system was very old. They didn't even try. They didn't make a fake file system. Opening the compass, every single one of the research things that I read, the compass was wonky. So just opening the compass and holding it still, seeing if it freaks out. The cameras and the zoom. So of the older ones, this is 13, 14. These had a blue tint in, the two on this side. They had a blue tint. This one doesn't. So for the older ones, you can check the blue tint, but you can also open the camera and zoom. You'll see it's an artificial zoom if you know better. But you know, our parents won't be able to tell that. I'll show you guys what it looks like maybe with the camera after this. And then the dynamic island. So this one, the iPhone 13, 14 has a dynamic island, which means, you guys won't really be able to see it, but this little black. This is a dynamic island. So if you do anything like change the volume, it expands. I don't think you guys can see that, but anyway, just trust me. It doesn't work on everything, so for me it works on the silent, but if you set an alarm, it didn't work. But that could be an indicator. For the 15, I saw a research about a 15, that has the action button, the 15 Pro. The action button was fully functional on that fake phone. So cannot even use that as an indicator. Okay.
When you Googled, or did you Google the serial number and see if the serial number was unique? I know for fake firearms, you often find that the serial number is the same across all the fake firearms. Was that serial number unique?
So when I looked at other fake phones, they didn't give away the serial number. And I didn't specifically search for how many instances of this serial number is in existence. But I didn't find anything more on my specific serial number than the Apple checker. But the other ones, they didn't give me their serial number. But that is quite interesting. It would be interesting to know. So I have a what's next. I am planning on continuing my research on this phone because my time was a little bit limited. As we all know, June and July was ransomware month, no idea what happened. I was supposed to root this phone on Friday, but I was one of those lucky people whose laptop had a blue screen of death, so great for me. First off, I want to root this phone because I don't want some fake iPhone beating me. Then I want to get a fake Android. So fake Androids are also a thing. I had a discussion while searching for more information on this phone. I had a discussion with our provider of our forensics tools, and I asked them, have you guys ever come across this? And they said, yes, only once. It was a fake Samsung device, and when they plugged it in to image it, they didn't know it's a fake phone. When they plugged it in to image it, it didn't work. It kept not wanting to image their Samsung S21 or whatever, even though they pressed the Samsung S21 button, it didn't want to work. So then after research, they saw it was a fake phone. But the indicators were less because obviously it's Samsung, you're expecting the Android errors, right? The other one is I asked someone at a sell shop, because I thought, people try and sell these things, maybe they have seen one. And they actually said no, they've never seen one in South Africa. They have also seen a fake iPhone in India. But this person was using the phone fine, had their banking app on, I wouldn't do that, but they were using this phone as an everyday. It looked fine. So I want to get a fake Android device. Oh, and another one is someone I know had a fake Sony device. So Sony, in the olden days, they had the little sticker at the bottom which said Sony. And they bought the phone, they were playing with the phone, they said something is weird with the sticker. And they pulled off the screen cover. And the Sony label came with. So there are other fake phones out there. It's not as prevalent, but I really want to get a fake Android and compare the two because of my curiosity. I want to do a blog post on this research, which will be updated if you guys are ever interested in, okay, but what did I do next? Did I manage to root it? If there any other information that we found on the phone, we will update that over there, probably on Redshift's page. I want to know if this phone is truly just for the profit of selling the device, because obviously this is very cheap to make and you sell it for the price, or just a little bit lower so it's like a nice sale. So are they making those phones just for the profit of selling these phones, or is there something more malicious at play? I didn't find any evidence of this phone sending out credentials. There was the sites that it connected to, but it mostly did it for images. So to get images on the phone and that type of thing to make it look legit. But it never sent out my credentials, nowhere in the phone. I tried. But is there something more malicious? I mean, this would be a perfect way to get everyone's credentials, right? Interesting would be to research how, as a company, do you know if your employees are installing your apps on a fake phone? And what's the risk you have as the managing director or the owner of this company with your employees having fake devices with your data on? What is the actual risk? That's all part of my phase 2. So in short, while my initial research revealed a lot of answers for my initial questions, I got new questions. Thank you. Any questions that I know the answer to, please? Would be nice.
Sure, I may have missed it, but was the device acting in some form of way as an HIV device where it was actually injecting onto the computer when you were connected?
No. No, I hope so, but no. So that's why I scanned the phone, and I did plug it into a safe environment to see what's going on. I didn't find anything. Nothing got picked up. That's why I'm thinking it's just a skin, and they're just selling it for profit of selling the phone, and nothing really malicious at play, but I still want there to be something malicious at play because it's interesting.
So if you're looking for something malicious to play, maybe reverse engineer that binary that Joy said.
Yeah.
Was, also, this was behind me suggesting that maybe the phone sensors against itself at the time. That's 2 months or something like that.
Yeah, monitoring the phone for an extended period. That's a great idea. Yeah, and actually reverse engineering that APK. It was on my list. I just ran out of time, to be honest. But I'm definitely adding that to my phase too. Any other questions?
Are you aware of any research or tracking internationally how many fake phones are in circulation? Because obviously somebody went to a lot of trouble to manufacture.
To make these, yeah. So in terms of publicly available research, very limited. I found almost nothing on these phones. There's like one YouTube channel who keeps buying fake phones off of, I can't remember the site, but it's like an Alibaba, just to like see if I can see, but he doesn't really go into the phone. And then I saw other research, or not research, but people who buy like 1,000 phones on Alibaba, and they're like, oh, we're gonna sell all these, look, you can make money this way, that type of thing. But there's no real indicator of fake phones, where they are found, how much are in existence, that type of thing.
I think the other problem is a lot of cheap phones coming into the market that are already rooted or have got very little security activated.
Yeah.
That's also an area of interest for me personally, because if you are offering services in the market and you want people to have phones and have apps that run on those phones, if those phones are already insecure when they hit the market, those customers are all impacted.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I wonder, because there's so many new phones coming out that's so cheap, the Xiaomis, the Oppos, all those, they're so cheap. Why do you want to buy a fake phone if these are more secure? But maybe that's why the trend has died down, or it really hasn't picked up. Or maybe people just want the phone for status but don't want to pay the price point. Don't know. Yeah?
Were you able to ascertain the actual kind of like hardware statistics, if it was what RAM was versus the reported RAM, for example, on the actual hardware?
So I watched a creator who opened the phone, and you can clearly see it's fake or weak. But the way to open the new iPhones is to heat it up to get this thing loose. And I honestly didn't want to break it before today. But probably will open it when I'm done with like everything. I'm like, okay, cool, I just want to open it now. But an interesting thing is when they open the phone is the cameras, these three. These two were just like a cover. Like it's not, there's no actual camera behind, it's just like there for show. There's only one actual camera in it. But when you see he opened the phone, it's very, very flimsy. So if you don't know what you're doing, you can easily break it, and I just didn't want to break it for now. There was someone in the back? Yeah?
I think my question is actually more broad. Does Apple actually have an authorized reseller? Because there's actually a lot more, and apparently in the iStore that we normally buy from is actually not an Apple product, but a reseller through it. So do they have normally a website where they say this is our authorized resellers to sell these phones?
So Apple themselves have a second-hand store. I think it's located in Rosebank or something, but they themselves have a store where they sell second-hand products, and you can actually check on their website to also see it. But in terms of a list of like, okay, these are the locations they have phones, I don't think they have, especially because of, you know, the little sell shops. You go in there, you're like, oh, I want a new phone, sell your phone. And I don't think like that's marked. And that could very well be a legitimate person who just broke the back screen of their phone that's an actual iPhone and selling it to them. So I don't think it's tracked, but if you ever want a second-hand iPhone that's not fake, first off, don't go onto Facebook Marketplace, that's a terrible idea. But go to maybe the Apple legit second-hand store. Any other questions? Great. Thanks everyone so much for coming to my talk. There's 5 minutes left, so you guys have a little bit of a break before the next one.